The afternoon sun hung heavy over Fort Holloway, pressing down on the tarmac where a dozen technicians stood in silent frustration. At the center of their attention sat a UH-1 Huey helicopter, olive drab and stubbornly lifeless. Its rotor blades drooped in the heat, the very picture of defiance. Kyle Kramer, 26 years old, the lead technician and proud of being top of his class, gave the helicopter's landing skid a hard kick. The sound was dull and flat, like the machine itself had no intention of cooperating. He scowled and muttered, "This is some kind of joke." Around him, laptops hummed with diagnostic software, screens glowing with endless green indicators claiming everything was fine. But everything was not fine. The Patriot Bell, as the Huey was called, refused to start. A few yards away, an old man stood quietly apart from the bustling group. His white hair caught the sunlight, and his weathered face carried the marks of many hard years. He wore a faded olive jacket and jeans, hands tucked calmly into his pockets. His name was Eli Vance. He wasn't watching the men, but the helicopter itself, as if it were an old friend that had fallen silent. Lieutenant Wells, the young officer in charge, stiff-backed and self-important, walked toward him. "Can I help you, sir? This is a restricted area," he said, the word sir holding more protocol than respect. The old man's pale blue eyes met his evenly. "General Michelson sent for me," he replied in a gravelly voice. "Name's Eli Vance." Kramer overheard and smirked. "So, you're the guy the general pulled out of retirement. We've got 12 certified techs, 3 master mechanics, and a direct line to the manufacturer. What exactly do you think you're going to do?" Eli didn't rise to the bait. He just said, "Just look. For now." Kramer laughed. "We've been looking for 6 hours. Everything checks out. The system says she's fine. She's just dead." The younger technicians chuckled along, sharing the same arrogance. They saw only an old man, an antique brought in to consult on another antique. Lieutenant Wells folded his arms, sharing their irritation. "Mr. Vance, we appreciate your time, but we have the situation under control." Eli's reply was calm, almost kind. "You're trained on glass cockpits and fly-by-wire systems. This one's different. She's got a soul, and right now, her soul was quiet." Kramer burst out, laughing. "A soul? What is this, an exorcism?" The laughter spread, but Eli ignored it. He began to circle the Huey slowly, his eyes tracing every rivet and line with the care of someone reading a language the others couldn't understand. The lieutenant checked Eli's file on his tablet. He murmured, "Crew chief in Vietnam." Kramer scoffed. "So, he knows how to patch bullet holes. We're not in a jungle, Lieutenant. We've got tools that cost more than his house." Eli crouched near the portside engine cowling and squinted at a small panel below the exhaust. "That access panel," he said softly. "Is it flush?" Kramer rolled his eyes and ran his hand over it. "Perfectly flush, torque specs exact, sensors green." "Did you open it?" "No reason to," Kramer snapped. "Diagnostics show no faults there." Eli nodded slightly. "Your system doesn't know this bird. I do." From his jacket, he pulled out a small, worn leather pouch. The crew laughed again. "What's in there, Grandpa? A magic wand?" Kramer mocked. Eli said nothing. His gaze drifted far away, to another lifetime. The sound of gunfire echoed in memory. The smell of smoke and oil filled the air. He was 20 again, hanging off the side of a Huey under fire, sealing a bullet hole in flight with a strip of tape, and a custom wrench from that same pouch. He blinked and returned to the present, surrounded by skeptical faces that had never known the sound of a helicopter fighting for its life. The tension thickened. The general's planned demonstration flight was already an hour late, and dignitaries were waiting. Lieutenant Wells's radio crackled. The commander's voice came through, sharp, controlled fury. "Status report, Lieutenant." Wells swallowed. "No change, sir. Still in no start condition. The civilian is observing." "Put him on with General Michelson," the voice ordered. Wells handed off the phone reluctantly to a young airman named Peterson. The kid had been watching the old man quietly, sensing something genuine in the way Eli moved, the calm certainty in his eyes. As Eli took the call, Peterson hesitated, then made a bold choice. He pulled out his personal phone and secretly called Major Davies, aide to the general. Within minutes, General Michelson himself was on the move. In the command center, he listened as Major Davies relayed the situation. The general's face hardened. "Elias Vance?" he repeated. The room fell silent. For those who don't know, he said to his staff, Elias Ghost Vance kept 60% of our Hueys flying in the Ashow Valley. He wasn't a mechanic, he was a miracle worker. That helicopter on the line, the Patriot Bell, was his bird. He engineered a modification not in any manual. That's the reason it still exists today. He saved my platoon with it in 1970. Now get me to that flight line. Moments later, the screech of tires broke the heavy silence on the tarmac. 3 black command vehicles stopped abruptly. General Michelson stepped out, his presence filling the space like thunder. Colonel Hayes followed, looking pale. The technicians froze. Wells's hand shot back from Eli's shoulder, like he'd been burned. The general marched straight toward the old man and halted. Then, to everyone's astonishment, he brought his heels together and gave Eli Vance the sharpest salute of his career. Mr. Vance, he said, his voice booming, it's an honor to have you here, sir. I apologize for your reception. No one moved. The general turned on Wells and Kramer, his tone turning cold and quiet. You have just embarrassed a legend. This man is Elias Ghost Vance, Distinguished Service Cross, 2 Silver Stars, Bronze Star with Valor. He rebuilt that Huey in a monsoon to save a recon team. He modified her so she could do what no manual will ever tell you. He saved my life, and you threatened him. The weight of his words sank deep. Wells and Kramer stood motionless, faces pale with shame. Eli stepped forward, placing a calm hand on the general's sleeve. They're good men, he said softly, just from a different time. They trust their screens. The bird just needs a familiar touch. His forgiveness was quiet, but it cut deeper than any reprimand. The general nodded and stepped back. She's all yours, Ghost. Eli knelt beside the panel he'd noticed earlier. From his pouch, he drew out a custom wrench, dark, hand-forged decades ago. With it, he loosened 4 bolts and opened the panel. Inside was a tiny lever, the manual fuel bypass he'd designed himself, a secret no system would ever detect. With gentle precision, he flipped it. The lever clicked into place. Eli stood, wiped his hands, and looked at Kramer. Try her now. Kramer climbed into the cockpit, nerves shaking his fingers. He hit the ignition switch, the Huey coughed once, sputtered, then roared to life. The rotor blades began to spin, slow at first, then faster until the air itself trembled with that unmistakable rhythm. Whump, whump, whump. The sound that at once meant life or death now thundered across the field. A cheer broke out among the crew. Airman Peterson smiled through tears. The others clapped, their earlier arrogance replaced by awe. Eli simply stood with a quiet smile, watching the machine he loved come alive again. In the days that followed, there were no court-martials. General Michelson instead launched a new program, the Heritage Initiative. Every technician in his command would learn the stories behind the machines they worked on. The first module was about the UH-1 Huey. At its center was a black and white photograph of a young crew chief, Elias Vance, smiling beside his helicopter. A week later, Kramer and Lieutenant Wells found Eli at a small roadside diner outside the base. He was sitting by the window with a cup of coffee. They approached quietly, hats in hand. Mr. Vance, we came to apologize. We were wrong. There's no excuse. Eli looked up at them and smiled gently. Sit down, boys. Coffee's on me. And if you got the time, maybe I'll tell you a story or two about that old bird. As the sunlight streamed through the diner window, the old man's voice carried softly over the clatter of dishes and quiet hum of life outside. And in that moment, 3 generations of soldiers shared something timeless, a lesson in respect, humility, and the enduring soul of a machine that once carried them through fire.